Hi, I'm Mike Brothman. I'm the Artistic Director of Brooklyn Art Song Society. Welcome to the inaugural edition of Wine and Song, where I interview the musicians of Brooklyn Art Song Society about whatever we happen to be performing. Our first session is very, very exciting. I have with me the fantastic pianist Spencer Meyer on my left and Yuri Sugiyama on my right. Between us, we are a Schubert trifecta. We are performing as part of our festival of the last year of Schubert's life. The three final piano sonatas are actually not sitting in the order. It's Yuri is doing D958, the C minor sonata. Spencer is doing the A major, 959, and I am attempting 960. So we're going to talk today a little bit. I think it's kind of a interesting experience. We have three people who I believe were all playing this sonata for the first time at these concerts. Yeah. I cheated, I played it in Boston last month, but effectively we learned it to do this. So we're people who are essentially working on these sonatas right now, and so I think it's a good opportunity to talk shop a little bit, see what, and also I'd like to say, because it's song and wine, we all have a nice glass of wine, and today's wine, our unofficial sponsor, because I don't know it, is Domaine Carneros Pinot Noir 2009, and let's all just give it a taste and see if we approve.
Yeah.
It's good. It's worthy. It is worthy of song.
Sorry, absolutely.
So why don't we just kind of dig in? I guess the first thing that I wanted to ask you guys is, what did you find the hardest? I think these sonatas are massive and they're epic, and but what did you find the hardest thing about your sonata? I'll start with you, Spencer.
The A major sonata is a piece that I actually hated when I first heard it 10, 15, 20 years ago. And having played so many songs over the years with singers, I've always thought that Schubert was best in the small form. But I've totally changed my mind studying this sonata.
Yes.
Finally this is my first Schubert sonata.
Oh yeah.
Finally sitting down and learning a Schubert sonata, I've completely changed my mind. It is very difficult to make this huge, expansive, long form hang together, because I think he is so brilliant at the small forms. But there's so much, there's so much song in the piece, in all three of the last sonatas. So
it's kind of astonishing that, you know, the pieces, like the first movements each movement could be like 15, 20 minutes long, but it's all just barely any counterpoint, barely anything but just melody and accompaniment. And the thing that I found that, at least with the B-flat major, that my conception of it before I actually studied it and started learning of it is this sort of sprawling kind of mess of a piece. It's just like it just goes on and on and on and on. It's 20 minutes long. But when you actually start to learn it and sort of think about it, it's really tightly written.
Yeah.
It basically makes perfect sense in just very, very traditional sonata allegro form. There's just very clear theme sections that lead in a very coherent way. Yeah. And it's not that the form, and the form is actually in some ways very, very simple. It's just expanded.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I actually found learning that once I got to know the piece, it actually felt shorter.
We were just thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Because he likes to wander.
Yes.
But it feels less like wandering. Like, did you find when you learned the C minor is a little bit? I feel like the C minor is the most direct of the three in a certain way.
Yeah. Yet when I was learning it, it just felt like it was going to go on forever, and I just thought, like, what am I going to do with this? But then the more I broke it down into like the most basic form things, it is so tightly organized, and it does feel shorter and shorter as I get to know it.
I remember the first time when I played it in Boston, I got to the end of the first movement, I was done. I was like, it's time to go home.
Spent.
Like I did not at all use my energy wisely. I put so much into the first movement that I had nothing, and actually, one thing I found really difficult is I got really hungry by the end.
Yeah.
If you find that it's like a lot of focus, and like by the end of the last movement, I'm always really hungry, and like I'm distractedly hungry. I'm thinking like, what key am I in? Like chocolate.
Well, you burn a lot of energy playing for that amount of time. And also, it's Schubert, at least the sonatas, it's very similar to Mozart and Bach, where it's so exposed.
Yeah.
It's really
So
stressful to
exposed.
play. It's so,
Yes.
you can hear absolutely everything. So my practice on it is much more detailed than maybe Debussy preludes or Chopin pieces. Or
Yeah, there's no, it is, you forget he very much is a classical composer.
Yeah.
He gets kind of grouped in as an early romantic, but he's very much, his models are Beethoven and Mozart for these sonatas.
Yeah.
It's almost,
structurally expanded.
exactly,
Exactly.
that's like a good way to put it, it's expanded, it's just sort of like, it's almost like instead of like making a form that's more complex than Beethoven and Mozart, he just kind of like, it's like if Mozart went on like a binge and gained like 50 pounds.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, I think so. So the next sort of topic that I thought about in our is, since we are Brooklyn Art Song Society, this is actually the first concerts that don't have strictly art song on the programs, and I like that. I think it works for a composer like Schubert more than others, because Schubert was one of the few composers who was like equally art song and instrumental.
Yeah.
There are other composers, Debussy had tons of instrumental and tons of song, but he's known predominantly as an instrumental composer, and he has songs.
Right.
And a lot of composers like that, but in Schumann is again, maybe Schumann actually kind of is more in that. But anyways,
A little more equal, but
yeah. But but what do you think, in your experience of songs of Schubert, did you take away from in playing the sonatas? And why don't we start with Mjori this time?
So what was the question?
What do you think the relationship between I didn't phrase it very clearly, between the sonatas and the songs?
Well, I mean, I find, like Spencer was saying, the sonatas are basically made up of songs that are linked together harmonically or by these more instrumental sounding sections. So, I guess when I played Schubert's songs, one of the hardest thing for me is voicing, and it translates that, and I think a lot about that in the sonatas too. I mean, not the sonatas, but the sonata that I'm playing.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just, I can't. If I could extract the songs in the sonatas, I bet they could stand as
on their own. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
as
It's like 10 songs in a row or something like that.
And it's so curious how well he mastered the short form as well as the bigger form. It's just incredible.
I do have a theory in life that composers who are capable of writing in very, very short forms are also equally capable of writing in humongous forms. Because the kind of, you need sort of the same tools in a certain way. And I find actually, the thing that I found in my song, because I'm playing a Schwanege song on the same, and so I was simultaneously working on Schwanege song, the song cycle, and the sonata, and I found that there were sections in Schwanege song, the transition, the modulations, the way he gets from one idea to another, where passages are almost literally note for note identical. And so, and I think that's, and I think, one of the things that's great about, or important about Schubert's sonatas is they're the first piano sonatas that really go to very, very foreign keys for extended periods of time. I mean, Beethoven started to experiment with not necessarily going to the dominant key in the second theme, but Schubert kind of goes all out and is going to, within a couple measures of my sonata, he's gone from B flat major to G flat major without too much. And so I think in the songs, he really wants to he goes to foreign keys because of something in the text, if something is
word painting.
Yeah, the word painting, and that's what, but he kind of got his practice in how to get, he kind of figured out, how do I get from, A major to like G flat minor and like 2 chords, because in a song you don't have that, if you spend like half a page modulating, then the song's over.
Right,
exactly. So he figured out in his songs how to modulate, and then he sort of expanded, once he had that sort of trick, he put it in the sonata in order to get to a foreign key. That's the one thing that I noticed in it.
For me, the sonatas in general always, when I was younger, they always struck me as very kind of boxed in and very just sort of matter of fact, and I didn't really appreciate how actually spontaneous and vocal they are until I got to know the songs, which are immediately you can see clearly each song how just natural and vocal they are, and there's so much of that in the sonatas. They're not boxed in at all.
Yeah, and you actually have the most egregious song relationship, because the opening theme of your last movement is basically in Frühling. Like,
yes, exactly.
More or less. You have the. I don't think that's the only that I know of in the three sonatas, like overt quoting of a song, the way that like the Trout Quintet quotes the Trout song, or Death in the Meeting quotes. I don't think he really did that. He could have done it in the C minor. I don't know about it.
I mean, not that I could.
I'm almost positive he didn't do it.
Direct.
Besides, rather than just the general feeling of singingness. So. Yeah, it's always and when you think of songs, you always think of language, of course, and I feel like a lot of Schubert's gestures are like very, very language oriented.
Yeah.
You know, what word would have a stress and what syllable you stress and stuff like that. I do think that really informs like how you phrase in Schubert.
Yeah, and breath.
And where
also,
you take a breath.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Things like that, definitely. I think that he was always thinking vocally.
Yeah, I think so too.
No matter what, like either there was in the string quartet and the symphony, he was rarely thinking anything besides how it would be sung.
Yeah, with Schubert, it makes so much sense why pianists in general should work with singers and get to know the repertoire, because the relationship between instrumental music and vocal. I mean, there's just so much you can learn.
I think and it's also like with phrase. I mean, the thing you sort of realize when you work with a singer is how a singer phrases is like we can kind of do whatever we want. Like we can in a phrase we can get louder, we can get softer, and so we sort of we're spoiled in that we just sort of phrase however we are moved. But a singer, like if a singer is going to their higher range, they're getting louder whether they like it or not. That's happening.
Exactly.
And so that you start to realize when you're playing how much those very small gestures that a singer would just have to do a certain way and make the music make so much more sense. And a lot of the slur markings, I think he's thinking like words. There was somebody who said, and I won't name their name because I'm about to say how I think they're wrong, that Schubert was very sloppy with his slur markings. They just said like he just kind of he was like I got like 3 months to live. I'm not going to worry about slur markings. He just kind of puts. I find it precisely the opposite.
Very specific.
I find it very
specific.
And it makes all the difference in the world if you follow them or not.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had that experience.
Exactly. No, definitely. Yeah, you can really, you can do exactly what's on the score, and it sounds like it's being sung.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And by the same token, just in general, being able to play in a vocal way, playing with singers helps so much, because even an untrained singer, the what they have to do naturally to make a phrase is such a good tool for us to playing a percussion instrument. To try to create this illusion of a long line in a singer's line. It's the perfect tool for us. Yeah,
whenever I play with a singer, I play with a good singer, which I do more than I deserve to. I find that I get this sort of like almost this like jealousy, like in performance, or this almost like this competitive thing with them, where like they can do such beautiful things in between the notes. Like we just kind of like we hit the sound.
Yes, and it does.
And it just died. That's all we can do. Yeah. And I always like when I play with Kyle. He does stuff. Kyle is baritone who we both play with, and he'll start to swell on something, and I'll like try in vain to sort of imitate whatever phrasing he's doing.
Yeah.
But I feel like my game is upped so much, my phrasing gets so much better, even though I can't even begin to do half of what he's doing, just trying to even come close.
Yes, yeah.
Makes the piano much more expressive.
Yeah, yeah.
And it is sort of hard to reproduce that when you don't have a voice to follow. It's a challenge. So the last topic of discussion that I wanted to covered was the elements of Schubert's style. I feel like Schubert has such a he has a style like all great composers, sort of completely of his own.
Yeah.
That's what he and I feel like he's a composer for a lot of people. Like he speaks to very, very personally in a lot of ways. And so I just wanted to go through everyone and see what's your favorite element of Schubert's style that speaks to you the most. Start with Miori.
Well, I mean, he's a genius at writing some of the most beautiful melodic lines. Always been captured by that. But also his harmonic approach. Some songs, it could be the darkest song in the world, but then the way he just
finds like that beauty
out
in
this beauty, and then the way he just brightens with color.
Yeah.
And then it just, I think
he's the master of that sort of like.
And it's so seamless the way he masters that, and it's just amazing. So yeah, that the melodic elements of Schubert has to be, have to be some of the most striking thing for me.
I think for me, it's like I really feel like Schubert, I think he was a very radical composer in a certain way, in that he was the first composer to me, and the thing that I find most striking of his style, who dealt with major and minor in a different way than anyone had dealt with it ever before.
Yeah.
In that he didn't, he saw them as sort of, rather than a dichotomy, as a sort of spectrum, and felt it was completely okay to sort of mix it, just like in the opening of my sonata, it opens in B flat major, and then all of a sudden just that minor trill in the beginning, with absolutely no preparation, no hint that it's coming from anywhere. And I think also, he usually, I think, to Mozart and Bach, and even to a certain degree Beethoven, it's like major had a certain set emotions, happy or triumphant or pastoral, and minor had a very set emotions of tragic or melancholy. And Schubert just kind of created tons of new emotions that each one could represent that no one had ever thought of,
and kind of put them on top of each other.
Yeah, and all of a sudden songs that are in the major are like heartbreakingly sad, and songs that are in the minor are sort of are not what they used to be.
Yeah.
And once you sort of break down that barrier, I feel like that's kind of like that got the engines rolling for romanticism and increased chromaticism and eventually sort of modernism in its own way.
Yeah.
So and I find him as a weird composer. He'll do weird things almost for the purpose of being weird. Like I always like that. I keep going back to that trill in the opening of my sonata. That's not my sonata. In the B flat sonata. In the B flat sonata, where it's just you can kind of like come up with a big metaphor for it, the foreboding of death or whatever. But it's just weird. It's just a weird musical decision that like immediately kind of like gets your ear perked up in a way that you couldn't do otherwise. Yeah. So and what about?
For me, I think it's his simplicity. Even amidst all of this complicated stuff we're talking about, harmonic shifts and emotions and things, it always comes from such a place of simplicity. Like it's often so much in the sonatas or the songs, just repeated chords or repeated figurations that go almost through the whole song or 2 or 3 pages of the song. Underneath this unbelievably natural, simple melody, and his simplicity makes the instruments talk in a way that very few composers are able to do.
And
I think
you notice very tiny details that he's almost like thinking like a minimalist, where it's just the same texture for such a long time that these like small sudden change, like his favorite little trick is to have Alberti bass, and then just for going on for page to page, and then one moment goes, instead of going goes something like a little turnaround there. And in any other composer, why would you even care? But suddenly your ear just gets pulled to it in a way that you couldn't do it in more complex textures where once like in a Strauss tone poem, a little detail like that would just be in a wash of sound that
Right.
The second movement of the C minor sonata, the melody is so beautiful and just but simple, but it comes back so many times.
Oh yeah.
But I think that simplicity of it really keeps the movement together.
I think that's the thing.
It's such an incredible thing.
It's a testament, like you said, to Schubertian melody. I think the reason you can know a melody is great if you can repeat it as many times as Schubert repeats them, and they don't get tired.
Exactly.
And they don't get bored.
Yes.
Like they're so good that you're not like, oh, this again. Like you never once feel like all he has to do is do the exact same thing in a slightly different key, and that's all the variation he needs to keep it interesting. But I think this all kind of goes back to like your sort of directness of expression and simplicity. I think that's really comes from his tradition of song, because I think song sort of prizes simplicity and eloquence.
Exactly.
And I think there's something
you
about
have to be for the short form.
Exactly. And I think there's just something about sort of saying something direct. You're literally saying something to the audience, not in a like metaphorical like speak. You're literally saying like, "Hey, look at this flower. This is the flower. I like it." Like that's what you're saying. And that directness of expression, I think, translates into non-song music that he's writing, because it makes it. He just wants to do. There's a certain sincerity and innocence. He just wants to get across the emotion, and he has nothing else to do. He doesn't have to be impressive or fancy. He just wants you to, find beauty in what he's presenting.
Exactly.
That's there's something sort of noble about that. I think in his music. Yeah. Yes. Well, I think we're both running out of time and wine. So I think we'll stop there. I just want to shamelessly plug our upcoming concerts. October 13th is the first one. I'll be joining, Spencer will be playing the A Major Sonata. I will be joining him on the second half with the excellent baritone David Williams. We will be performing Schwanege Song, the Great Song Cycle. That is at Barge Music at 8 p.m. You can check out www.bargemusic.org. The next concert is Miori's, which is November 18th, which is a Sunday at 5 p.m. That is in the Firehouse space in Williamsburg. And also on that concert is Winterreise with the great baritone, I'm sorry, he's not a baritone, he's a bass, Paul Ahn. And he'll be joined by Julius Abraham at piano. That's going to be a great concert. And I will be braving the B-flat Major Sonata on December 16th. That concert on Sunday, also at 5 p.m. That's at Tenry Cultural Center on 13th Street, right off of Union Square between 5th and 6th Avenues. That's also going to be a great sonata because Spencer will be joining us again, this time playing some songs with the great soprano Martha Guth, and also joined by some instrumentalists. Clarinetist?
Pascal Archer.
Pascal Archer is a great clarinetist, and also the hornist from the American Brass Quintet, David Wakefield, for the one song with horn, piano, and soprano. So if you want to find out more about Brooklyn Art Song Society, www.brooklynartsongsociety.org. You can follow us on Twitter, Brooklyn Art Song, and we'll see you next time. There's wine and song.
Cheers.
Cheers.